We have this idea that what is normal is also healthy and natural. And I'm saying that in this culture, the norm is neither healthy nor is it natural. In fact, the norm, I think, is making us sick. We talk about illnesses and of body and mind as abnormalities. I'm saying that illness in this society, given the conditions, is a normal response to an abnormal circumstance. Traumatized child who has not developed self-regulation. I'm not talking about repression of self, but regulation. So, for example, I throw up at the airline counter and they've overbooked the airplane, okay? My healthy response is disappointment and some degree of anger. I'd say, this is not right that you did this. I want you to redress it. You do something about it, please. Throwing a tantrum. Yelling at the poor clerk behind the counter who had nothing to do with creating the problem, who's just trying to do her job and trying to help me as best she can. That's not a mature adult. That's a child whose mid-frontal cortex, so self-regulation, has gone offline and his emotional circuits have taken over. Believe me, I've been an adult child very often in my life. Makes you react to the present like you're still a child. Essentially, I mean, that's a very narrow definition of trauma, but that's one of its essential aspects. Children should be able to allow to feel all their emotions. And I mentioned play before. Those are the needs of the child. As human beings more generally, we need a sense of connection, a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging, a sense of transcendence, so that there's something, we're part of something greater than just our little egoic concerns. These are all the needs of human beings. To the extent that they're met, we thrive. To the extent that they're not met, we shrivel. And there's lots of shriveled people in positions of great power in this society. Why are we seeing more and more kids with ADHD these days? Because parents are so stressed. And sensitive kids pick up on that stress. They don't know what to do with it. They tune out as small children when their brains are developing. It's not a genetic disease. It's an adaptive response. The problem with adaptive responses is they help you at the time, but later on they become problems. In other words, adaptive at one point, maladaptive at another point. Again, the problem is that they're not conscious adaptations. They're not willed, they're not deliberate, they're automatic. They're under the level of awareness. Therefore, I can't just drop them. In fact, I even associate my survival with them. So I'm very reluctant to give them up. So something has to happen to wake me up. Oh, this isn't working anymore. This is where a diagnosis like ADHD or depression comes in. This is where illness comes in. It can be a wake-up call. Again, I don't recommend it. Or a relation, or a bad divorce. All of a sudden you realize, I married somebody who didn't understand me. Why did I stay with them so long? Because my parents never understood me. So I expect not to be understood. But it doesn't work for me anymore. So next time I marry, I'm going to marry somebody who is a bit more mature, and I'm more mature now. So what I'm saying is that these adaptations, they show up as problems later on in life, and then we can learn from them. My wife is not responsible for my healthy development. She's not my mother anymore. As a matter of fact, the reason women get so much autoimmune disease is they suppress themselves to take care of the stresses of their men very often. Partly because they have more of the hormone oxytocin, which is a nurturing hormone, but partly because it's their cultural role. And if you take men who look after children, they become really good mothers. So it's a question of what role are people put in. But how you, like even with children, as we said earlier, we have to draw our boundaries. But the question is, how do we draw our boundaries? And in what spirit and with what intention? There's a system in our brain for anger. Not just for us, mammals. What is it there for? It's there to protect our boundaries. Somebody invades your space, physically, or in the case of human beings, emotionally, used to say, "No, stay out." That's the role of healthy anger. If I repressed that healthy anger, what would happen to me in life? People would be just trespassing all over me all the time because I had no boundaries. So healthy anger is a boundary defense. Think of a person with a big beach ball trying to push a beach ball under the water. That takes a lot of effort. Now, have you ever been angry?
Of course.
Okay. Now, when you're angry, it's not just an emotional state in your head, it's the whole body is. Now, how much energy would it take to suppress that anger? Can you imagine? So that you don't even feel it? But not feeling your anger was an adaptation to your childhood, where the anger wasn't permitted. So that emotional, physiological effort of repressing anger takes a toll on the nervous system and on the immune system. It's a major role in disease. I'm saying, yeah, it plays a major contribution. Immune system and the emotional system are not separate systems. They're part and parcel of the same apparatus. They're unified. When you suppress the emotions, you're also suppressing the immune system. When you don't know how to defend your emotional boundaries, that also weakens your immune boundaries physiologically. It's that simple. Or if you repress the anger, that anger doesn't go away, doesn't evaporate into the heavens, it turns against you in a form of depression or self-loathing and so on. In the same way, the immune system turns against you, and now you have autoimmune disease. And so the traits that were identified with chronic illness, most chronic illness like cancers or autoimmune disease, are emotional self-suppression, inability to experience healthy anger, desire to please others, to fit in, to be acceptable, to be nice, to be ignoring of your own needs. These are the traits that are over and over and again identified in the literature, whether with multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis or with cancer. Take depression, this so-called biological disease of the brain. What does it mean to depress something?
Try to push it down.
To push it down. People having to push down their emotions. Why do they have to push down their emotions? To fit in with other people's expectations. If you're in a bad relationship, the healthy response is not depression, but to deal with the challenges in the relationship, either by working them out or by leaving the relationship. Depression isn't a necessary outcome. The response to the death of a close one, is not depression, it's grief. Grief is the healthy response. We have a system in our brain for grief, by the way.
So grief becomes depression when you're not allowing yourself to grieve.
But you don't know how to grieve properly, yeah. And you don't know how to grieve properly because your emotions were suppressed as a child. You have to reconnect to yourself so you can feel your emotions. That's the treatment of depression.
Talk to me about reconnecting. How do you reconnect? What is that process?
First of all, you recognize that you're disconnected. And you notice how that disconnect shows up in so many areas of your life. On the job or in your personal relationships, for example, or in your relationship to yourself. So you have to become aware. And this is where I talk about disease, whether it's physical or so-called mental, as teacher. Not that I recommend illness as a way of learning to anybody, but if it happens, it can actually teach you. And you can ask yourself, what have you been pushing down? And what are the stories? Why do I push it down? Oh, I push down emotions because I've learned, I have the belief that if I'm angry, I'm a bad person. Well, is that really true? Is a person that experiences anger really a bad person? I learned that if I push down my needs, then people will love me. Do I really want to be loved at the expense of disconnecting from myself? As a child, I had no choice, because I had to be loved or connected with, otherwise I wouldn't have survived. Is it still like that?